the shorter one below. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So I support that edit. Just reviewing the original and the revised version. What do you all think?
Yeah, I think it takes out a lot of the wordiness of the what was initially proposed and gets to the essence of what the study is all about. Jack?
The title of this section 2, the centralized entity, there was a suggestion. I'm not seeing it
Yeah,
right now.
I have a question with the word entity, and that was raised a few times, I believe.
Somewhere in here, somebody suggested a completely different phrase, and now I can't find it.
Yeah, I have it highlighted in my comment here. In our last meeting, coordinating body was one suggestion.
Yes,
I like that.
because it comes up in the recommendation below that Ted had.
Does anyone object to changing centralized entity to coordinating body?
Not
That
at
was
all.
for me.
Do it.
It makes sense.
I don't know. I guess this text should be white.
And then I would, and right above that, Patrick, in the index there, we have,
Yes.
we'll change it
Yeah,
there.
that can be updated.
Can I just update these dynamically?
Yeah, that update.
I'm going to go through and do a find and replace.
And replace, yeah, because it'll appear in the first recommendation below this.
Yeah.
Right, I just updated it.
Thank you. All right. So beyond that, I think we have consensus to remove this paragraph, replacing it with the paragraph below. Are we all good with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I'm just going to accept that suggestion. I'm going to remove all of this. And I'm going to accept this suggestion.
So the first recommendation, centralized staff support for boards into one coordinating body, which will?
Yes. Yeah. I think into one centralized staff support for boards into one coordinating body.
Yeah.
We have some duplication of words here then. It could say centralized staff support for boards into one coordinating body, which will. Does that read correctly?
Right, colon.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
One coordinating body, which will. All right, let's just look at the revisions, the suggested revisions to this whole block here and see if we have consensus. Yeah, and in my opinion, most of these are word choice. It's just getting a consistent use of language.
Right. We should try and do that throughout the document so we show consistency. I don't know.
I have a question about the second bullet that coordinates
Yes.
board review. By that, do we mean the formal board review that would occur over the course of several years? Because I don't know that we want.
That was
staff
my
to coordinate.
intention. Yeah, was to at least place ownership of the process with the coordinating body. You know, maybe they're not the ones conducting it, but they're the ones that are kind of like keeping it on schedule and bringing it to the boards and commission council committee to
Well, then how
make it
about just coordinate the board review process?
sure.
Uh-huh.
Do we have any other questions or comments on this block of
Um,
edits?
just a minor thing that most of those bullet points are sentences except for the second bullet point. Or should that be a sentence? Coordinate.
Well, it is
I
a
think they're
sentence
all,
now.
Okay.
yeah. Would it be easiest if I just accept all of these and then we take a look to see
Yeah.
if they read
But
properly?
yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
in the process of doing.
Let's do that.
Yeah. I think the goal is to at least make sure that all of the bullet points start with a verb.
Yes. Active verb. Uh-huh.
And then there's some instances where like spaces got missed during the
Right.
adjusting process.
So here's the proposed version.
Yeah.
I think this sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we ought to move on. I think that's good. So we can try and get through as much of the document tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something on that note, you know, maybe not this time, but next time, something that I found really helpful when I did my last read through was actually start at the end and go backwards. Because oftentimes we'll start at the beginning and then you run out of time to get to the end. And so that kind of gives you a chance to put some more energy before you run out of steam.
Right. One question I have, I know we have a paragraph here to revise. I think this was an item we wanted to move later in the document. So I'm just noting that I guess we should revise the text first, and then we could, if we all agree, we could move this back closer to where it should be in the order of items. So let's start here. We have another suggestion to review this background statement, which has now been revised to this text down here. I can't quite show you both at the same time, so let's just read this as is and see if we're okay with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
This is just, I'm going to look up this section of the statute just for my own information. Yep, that's good.
That's correct. Okay.
Yes.
I pulled it from the paragraph before it, so I definitely didn't look it up myself.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure if we're going to cite statute, we're citing it accurately, and we are.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. That's
Yeah. Having studied this particular recommendation quite a bit, I think this works.
good.
Awesome. This was another section where I kind of just rewrote it using more like active verbs most of the time is what's going on here.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to just accept all these suggestions so we can read it as
Yeah,
That's
you can
right.
always Control Z it back out if you want
Yeah.
to see what was there before.
And now here, I think we can cut this conclusion paragraph. Does anyone have an issue with that? I
No.
agree.
Yeah,
I agree. We're trying to shorten this up and reference an appendix.
right.
All right.
In
And
most instances, I feel like when we really removed the recommendation language out of the background and put it with the recommendations, then it was a lot easier to just put the conclusion with the background to state like, hey, this is why, this is what we're hoping to get out of these recommendations. And then it kind of made all the conclusion sections unnecessary.
yeah, I agree. I'm gonna cut this one. This one we previously identified was a duplicate, so I'm just gonna remove this hybrid piece.
Do you mind if I go
So-
through and take the names out next to people's recommendations?
Yes, go
Like,
ahead.
are we to that point now where we can do that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
And this was actually quite helpful because now what we have here is, the background, and the recommendation is actually a pretty short piece of text. So do we want to move this section at this point, or do we want to leave it and come back to that?
I'm okay with moving it later. I think that's less important right now than actually just like clearing up some of the suggestions.
We want to get the
Okay.
text right.
Right.
Get the text
I know,
right
but-
first, so we can reorganize later.
I agree.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So here we are at mission and goals. I guess this one lacked a background, so you've added this, Elise. So I'm just gonna accept it and we can read it. So here we have a very specific suggestion around the word choice.
Yeah, I didn't know if here we should maybe talk about all of these recommendations actually talk about goals and not necessarily mission. And if we're talking about the charter for a board, I think we're really talking about the mission, like an overarching vision mission, as opposed to goals that are going to change on a year-to-year basis.
Mission should really establish the purpose of the board, whereas the goals, as you say, can be set or revised annually or whenever needed. So, yes,
I think that this should say mission rather than goals. Do we agree? Like
Yeah.
this? Okay, I'm just trying to make sense of the order of these comments and what they're referring to. But here's what we have first.
Yeah, my comments and Ted's response to those are sort of outdated now, aren't they?
Right. In response to both of your comments, I made the suggestion that you guys were talking about, but making Yeah, E and
Right.
F as sub under G.
Right.
Okay. So I think I think there's already support for this change. So I'm just gonna accept these, which requires removing that. And
Right.
now obviously like the letter order isn't right, but I'm not gonna mess with that right now because it could change further.
I'm actually going to highlight D for us to maybe come back to with the larger group, because I think there's I'm trying to understand like what the intention is here of like there's talk about, you know, setting the mission should maybe be part of like the broader like board review kind of stuff, and then there's stuff about aligning the goals with the city, with the goals of the council committee and the strategic plan, and those are like a little bit more on a year-to-year basis. I just still have some questions about this and might want to come back to it when
Yeah.
the bigger groups here.
Patrick, do you want to mark that so we know to come back at our next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, is the way we went in to indicate that with a comment, or do you want to use this highlight style? What do you think makes the most sense, Elise?
I think highlighting it definitely
Well-
calls attention to it, but we might want to include some of the discussion that we just had as a comment.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I just have confusion about the whole like separating mission from goals and that kind of stuff.
What should I capture here, Elisa, around how this item relates to, is it how it relates to the item below, or can you just restate?
Yeah, well, so as it's written right now, half of it is talking about goals, which is already included in recommendation G. But we do need to have some type of recommendation. In my view, we need to have some type of recommendation about reviewing the missions. And those missions might not always, you know, if we set a mission now, the council priorities are also going to change year to year. But like, I don't know. I'm just kind of like talking out loud right now, but I think there's some more discussion to be had about that.
I don't know about
revising
the charter of the board itself, though, and how often should that change? I think the board was established for a purpose, and that is identified in its mission or charter. Whereas goals can be modified. So I'm not sure about that. I don't.
Yeah, I would think to sort of pile on top of what Elise was saying, a mission is stated in a charter, and it is largely unchanging unless
It shouldn't change.
Unless it maybe the mission and charter statement ought to be part of the review recommendations, which it kind of is now, because one of the things that is potentially an outcome of the review process is a reassignment of missions and goals. But mission seems like a much broader, permanent charge, but goals tend to be more short term.
Right.
Mission is more, yeah, it's broad, it's a vision, it's a general purpose. I don't think it should be changed unless you have a complete revision of what the purpose of the board is.
Right, and
I would just say,
that's part of the 4 or 5 year review process.
Yeah.
I think for me, what causes a little confusion with this item is that I think what I'm hearing some is that there should be, in some cases, a review of the mission. If things have changed drastically in a subject area, you know, we should make sure the mission is still relevant today. However, this item speaks about now mission and how it aligns with the goals set by city council and council committees, and that's kind of is that really the metric we should be using to evaluate the mission of a board? I do think mission should be reviewed, but not necessarily if it aligns with the short-term goals of council. So I think there's a misalignment between the two halves of this sentence.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we flagged this one. We can discuss it further. While we're in this section, I did want to draw attention. For one, are we happy with how the 3 items are listed here? And also, should this item H remain a pending recommendation, or should it become a recommendation?
I would support including it as a recommendation.
Yeah.
I support that as well. So we'll move it as a recommendation. If other folks feel differently, we can flag it for discussion.
If we do end up, when we come back to this this highlighted section with the group, and we decide that maybe it doesn't fit here, or it needs to be reworded, and that what it sounds like I'm hearing from this group is that we do feel like review of the mission should take place, but it should be part of that like 5-year review process. And so if we do end up modifying the section, we might consider changing this section title to just be about goals specifically and not mission and goals.
Right. Because that
Target.
B might be duplicated from where we're talking about board review from a mission perspective. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this section, or I'll just move us on to the next one.
Good.
All right. So here we are at technology. This one has a background paragraph with no revisions. Let's see where we have some comments here.
I think I
Right. I think I agree that this one should say technical knowledge. What do you all think?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Okay, I'm gonna revise it. Should be technical knowledge.
Just a thought. Should we, I was just thinking, one's understanding versus depth of knowledge are two different things. Should we talk about a technical understanding or a knowledge base? I don't know. I'm just asking, because it differs from. Are we talking specifically which individuals, the IT staff now, or board members?
Are you speaking on item I here or item J?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I read this recommendation to say that the participants, basically the board members themselves, shouldn't have to expend a high level of effort or possess a high level of technical knowledge to be able to participate. Basically, the tools should be provided so that anyone can use them.
As well as the public. When we say participants, like we're using the word participants as opposed to board members, because we also want to say that this also applies to members of the public who want to participate. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
In this paragraph, I see there's an asterisk next to hybrid meetings. I don't recall what that referred to. We have that in a few places here. Alan, do you recall? I know we worked on this together.
I don't recall. Yeah, you and I worked on that, and I don't recall putting an asterisk in there. So Can
Like
we-
where
Okay.
we
I
should
think-
define it somewhere.
What's that?
I think
Is it-
that was. I think that was the idea that we would. That was a note that we had to define what is a hybrid
Define
meeting, and we do that right here.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, that, I didn't author it, but that's exactly the way I interpreted it.
okay.
Okay. Because I do agree that distinction matters. You know, we don't want to create a recommendation for hybrid meetings that mean different things to different people.
Right. And we defined it below. You and I worked on that.
Yes. Yep.
In my line of work, when you do documentation and you have an error or a note or anything and you put an asterisk here, you have to have it on the page later, like the symbol, how many times the symbol was put, the note, like, so my brain
Right.
like, what is this?
I'm not sure who added this red text, but I think that makes sense. Join meetings remotely if allowed by the rules.
Are there any meetings that's not allowed? Like one of the like the more quasi judicial boards?
I don't think civil service allows for hybrid. I think it's under state statute. It doesn't.
Why don't we ask the clerk's office about that? Because I'm sure they would know. And then we
Yes.
wouldn't have to be uncertain about it.
Yeah. In fact, I have those rules not too far from here. But yeah, let's do that.
I have another thought on the asterisk conversation about the hybrid meetings. Another way to deal with that is to take the bulleted list of what we're suggesting a hybrid meeting is, could be a footnote on this page, just that the mention of hybrid meetings in the recommendation would have a numerical footnote attached to it, and then the hybrid meeting definition would simply be a footnote at the bottom of the page.
I think personally, I think that formatting would make sense. I would support leaving it listed explicitly just because of the importance, I think, of that definition.
Right. Fine. That's
I
it.
would actually move from where it is here into recommendation I or into the background.
I would support moving it under section I. I think it should be where we're talking about investing in the technology. I agree. It makes the most sense to describe what those requirements are right after that.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, and I think it did come up before, the Civil Service Board is required to meet in person,
Okay.
especially when they're having hearings. So
Well, we have a note to follow up with the
yeah,
city
we can
clerk
follow
with
with the clerk's office, but she needs to refer to the state statute also, and the city attorney.
Yeah.
Alan, I wanted to check what we were just discussing was moving this highlighted block of text here out from under J up to item I. We thought that this text would make more sense there, talking about it.
Yes.
Okay. Then we had one other. Ted's comment here is about, it's the same thing about the rules. So I think that's handled by this follow-up step here.
Yeah, Maggie should be able to answer that.
All right, so now we're talking about technology and I, hiring staff to facilitate that in J.
So is recommendation M really included in I?
Yeah. Let's see. We have a few things here. I think there's some duplication here. Like M is the same as I think.
Or part of it, at least.
And similarly, I kind of feel that L is the same as J. Yes, they're kind of speaking to the same thing.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
If nobody objects, what I'd like to do is take this text from L, put it under J, and then just note that there's some duplication.
That's what I did with M. I took everything after the verb and just added it to the end of I. And we could do some refinement after that.
And then I think M here, I would like to do the same thing, move this up to I and see see how we can consolidate this language. I do think that M is getting a little bit, as well as your suggestion here, Elise. M is getting at public participation a little bit more than I currently read. So I do think there's a revision we can make, but I think we don't need it listed separately.
Am I?
I just put that up there, Patrick, before you said something about it. I moved
okay.
You were talking about moving.
Yeah, even better. It's done.
I'm sort of thinking about K just being another sentence at the end of J. Hire additional staff, increase support staff, and utilize community members. All of those are
I would
ways
support
of
that.
adding people to the mix.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I also personally, I would prefer for it to be combined because listing it separately causes me some concern. Like, you know, I've supported hybrid meetings as a community member, but I do think the city should embrace that as a service they need to provide. They shouldn't be relying on volunteers across the board to support hybrid meetings, because not every board will have the ability to bring someone in and get them to do that. I think this this suggestion is this text up here.
Where
I think I was the one who suggested the possibility of using community members, but thinking about it, I'm not sure if I really support it now.
actually I think I'm the one who, I know I wrote something with respect to taking advantage of tech skills in the community.
I referenced it also, and I'm
Jay did too. I remember him saying something specifically about leaning on the knowledge of citizens to do that.
Problem is you don't have the same commitment of volunteers as you do with paid staff. And there's not you don't have the overview either, the oversight and overview. I'm not sure if I support that or not right now.
Maybe we should highlight it and come back to it when we have more folks here.
Let's do that.
Yes.
I know my thoughts on it are not that it would be outside the overview of staff. It just would be supplementing staff when they either couldn't or were were overburdened and couldn't get to something. They could have a list of volunteers that might be brought into the mix in a pinch.
Hmm.
While we're talking about this section here, the part that's highlighted above that I had written about, do we want to add something about should we move that? And that's not what I would need us to say, but just as a comment for something we need to develop later is to maybe, because we had talked about there was a lot of burden on staff liaisons to do that. And so I'm not sure that recommendation J specifically speaks to transferring the ownership of those duties to to someone who's not the staff liaison.
I think that should go under J. That's where we're talking about this topic. So I do agree with that. I'm not entirely sure where we word that in the sequence of paragraphs here, but I do agree that that's something we got from the survey and something we should include in kind of why J is necessary.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe that goes in the background, just explaining that we heard that in the survey, but then we'll make a recommendation about it.
I do think some of that could be referenced from in the background, but I think we need to hit on it a little more explicitly in the paragraph here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Something like, to better support non-IT staff members, the city should hire additional IT staff, or some language like that.
Yeah. That's why it's highlighted. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
And then Ted specifically had, what did Ted say? Oh, he was wondering if this stuff about staff, that middle paragraph there, should actually go with the coordinating body. And I see what he's saying, that they should be kind of the ones leading that. But I feel like since it's specifically related to a technology thing, that it belongs here. But maybe we could say that that the coordinating body would kind of lead the charge on that.
Right. I can see that either way. I think I personally agree that it makes the most sense to list this under a technology heading.
Yeah.
And I don't know off the top of my head whether it seems to me that those staff would probably be in the IT department and they would be coordinated by the coordinating body, but not necessarily part of that department. Just thinking how the city structures those kinds of roles.
So we feel generally resolved on that suggestion by Ted.
I think so.
Okay. Resolved.
What about this recommendation, N? I see that Elise suggested that this is an outreach rec rather than a tech rec, and I personally agree with that. What do you all think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and move it.
Yeah. Move it.
I'm not sure what order to put it in, so I'm just gonna place it here for now.
Okay.
We're making our way through. We're down to board. We're about, looks like maybe a third, maybe halfway through. But I know there's some content at the end that isn't quite as dense.
That's why we'll start at the end next time.
Right.
This was another one where I felt like there was just a lot in the background and a lot of it. I mean, me personally, you can read in my comment that I don't think we should I don't think we should say that we should do board review because staff are overburdened. I think we should do board review because it is prudent to occasionally review, the system that has been set in place. And so to lead in with all this stuff about, well, we're going to review boards in order to cut them because staff are overburdened. I didn't feel like that was what we really wanted to go with here.
Yeah, I can comment because I had originally authored much of this with Ted, but what I was just trying to do is suggest that put enough in the background to justify doing this in lieu of wholesale rearrangement of boards and cutting boards and going from 20 odd to 4.
Yeah.
So, it was it's probably unnecessary here, but I felt like in a vacuum that was one of the reasons that we're even recommending this.
I think it's a prudent thing to do. If a board is going to be created, then there should be a process to see if it's still relevant to the needs of the city and council. And if it doesn't serve that purpose anymore, then I understand its elimination. But outright elimination of 20 boards to 4 without a thoughtful process and review consideration was ill thinking.
Right. So I'll just say I support replacing this paragraph with the suggestion Elise put below. It looks like Jack has indicated agreement.
Yep.
Is there any part of that third paragraph of the highlighted section that maybe we want to keep? Like, I think I tried to, in the last sentence of my suggestion, I talked about providing flexibility for making incremental changes. But if there's anything that we want to keep maybe from that, rather than make wholesale changes paragraph, to maybe like further express, to get that sentiment.
I personally prefer the way you left it in the revised paragraph.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's keep it as is.
Okay. So I'll accept these edits. And I'm going to resolve this and remove that. Look how much shorter it's getting. All right, so now we have the first recommendation in this section. Yeah, I'm good with all of these text edits up here. Can I go ahead and accept them?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight this last bullet. Looks like, at least you suggested removing this, the staggered schedule is, and I think that aligns with our discussion from the last meeting. We didn't want to be that prescribed in this.
Well, in effect, it's already suggested in the recommendations, it's paragraph recommendation.
Oh, right.
That's 5 years. Yep.
And when I originally authored this, I put that last bullet as a, it was before I wrote the paragraph introducing. So it was duplicated. So the bullet can go away.
Okay. I'm just going to leave this note here. We did talk about maybe moving some of this into an appendix. We don't have to worry about that
I think
right
it should stay right here, personally. I think it's important. This is important material here that shouldn't be relegated to an appendix.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way myself.
Okay. All right. Now this was one that required additional discussion. So perhaps we just skip this one for the moment. I do think we can remove this conclusion paragraph.
I still, just a quick comment. I have a problem of using third party or outside consultants for something like this. I'm not in support of that particular recommendation.
Yeah.
I think it should
And
be.
Yeah, and I put a comment suggesting the same. I don't think it's a good idea.
No,
I'm also
Okay.
of that opinion.
I think it should be eliminated.
I tend to agree as well. But since we don't have the full group, I'll leave it for now. Mainly since I know that Ted was the one that suggested this, and we should just make sure we come to a clear consensus.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I would at least like to give him the opportunity to make his case.
Exactly. Now I'm just looking at P and Q here.
P is covered in the process of review.
Okay.
Potentially board dissolution is one of the recommendations.
Right. Yep. Do we all agree we can remove P at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
And then what I have under Q here, the first two lines is what was written as the pending recommendation. And I have some comments here that I think Jack also agreed with, is that, first of all, I don't agree that these two boards are underperforming. I think that they never resumed meeting because staff did not schedule meetings for them.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, but I do feel strongly that the city needs to take official action on them. And what I've heard anecdotally, maybe through Stacy's communication with the clerk's office, is that they've been waiting to hear from us about what we think about it before they continue those meetings. And I'm like, no, y'all need to just start meeting again.
Yes. Yeah.
Or take the official action and resolve them. But I really personally think they just need to be reinstated.
Yeah, and I would just say, just reading this, this first sentence is about evaluation and decisions. I think the second part here says that like the city should take action.
The first part is what's involved in the review process. This part here related to these two boards in particular is separate from just the general review process.
I would say, just when I read the second paragraph, I agree that the city should take official action. I think, personally, I think they should just let those boards start meeting again. I don't even think the city really should consider dissolving them. They should just get them up and running again and review them like they do every other board.
I'm wondering if this needs to come out of the board review section to, I don't know where, but somewhere else.
Right.
I seem to remember comments in the survey about the Citizens Police Advisory Committee in particular, that someone, I believe there was a police officer who attended a meeting and was barred from entering or something, which was
There's been a big issue between APD and the Police Advisory Committee. And they've never, at least as far back as I recall, they've never been on the same page. I don't know about that particular board, but I really believe in the purpose of the Recreation Board, Parks and Recreation. I think that requires community input, and apart from the department itself. So I'm opposed to outright elimination of that board, and I still think if under the right leadership, the Police Advisory Committee has a purpose in this community, and I don't think we should make any recommendation right now. I think leadership is part of the problem, why they're underperforming, not the goals and purpose of the boards.
I'm looking at the board report for the Citizens Police Advisory Committee, and just first of all, there are only 3 responses from members of that board to the survey. So I think we should take it with a grain of salt, whatever's said in there. But also in all of those Likert scale questions, 2 of those 3 people didn't respond to those and only 1 did. So I feel it's not appropriate to draw a lot of conclusions based on that limited number of responses, but it should be reinstated because it's not, if there was an ordinance that set it up, there should be an ordinance to have it not.
Right. Yes.
To have it, I'm sorry, I missed an ordinance.
If there's an ordinance setting it up, there should be another ordinance required to dissolve it. It can't just be staff saying, or even council just being like, no, we don't feel like doing this anymore. There should be a transparent process to it, which is what we're saying with board review.
Well, council created, council can also remove it.
Right, but with an official ordinance, not just deciding that they feel like it.
Yeah. My impression is that both CPAC and the Recreation Board have been placed into limbo, kind of at the unilateral decision of department heads, maybe with support of the city manager, which is not what should happen to any board in the city, in my opinion. Because they both kind of stopped because the departments that were involved in them didn't want them to keep meeting, and that seems like a really poor decision in hindsight if you look at how much our council and staff are talking about public safety and city parks nowadays. Like, the main resident advisory group for both of those issues has been sidelined.
Yeah, what's going on in the community has definitely changed in the past 4 years or so. I mean, it wasn't that long ago people were talking about defunding the APD, and now the city can't have enough of policing for security and safety, both downtown and throughout the neighborhoods. So I believe that the community has a role in an advisory committee, and we should not be, I think today, given this situation and given appropriate leadership, they can both committees or boards can serve a function.
I agree, Alan, and I just wanted to make a suggestion for today, if you all agree. I kind of feel this first sentence should go, and then we should flag the second paragraph as an item for discussion by the group.
Okay.
Because I think I think we want to say something. It might need to go in another section, but I think we need to speak with all of us to decide exactly how strongly we're making a recommendation around these boards.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
maybe just revising that paragraph that we're keeping in, just
Yes.
reconfiguring that, you know, re-editing it in a way that's reflects a more productive statement.
Yeah, I certainly don't think we should put them up on the chopping block as like the first boards to be reviewed, especially when they haven't been given the opportunity to meet in 4 years.
Right. So
And
I'm
I
going to
know
move this from.
this is outside of our scope of what we get to make recommendations about, but if I had the opportunity to make a recommendation about CPAC, it would be that they change their board membership makeup to include a member of APD. But that's outside our scope.
I think
Yeah.
they already do. I think the police chief is supposed to be on CPAC. I've never seen the chief attend in that capacity, but it's the chief or their designee is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a new police chief who has seemed from the interviews I've seen from him, seems to have more interest in having those lines of communication as opposed to our previous police chief.
He's far more, and having worked with several police chiefs myself, he's far more engaged and involved in community safety and neighborhood safety. And I've have had a number of discussions with them and exchange of emails, and I know he's committed to that. So I think we have a new guy in town, although he's been there all for 28 years. But yeah, I think it's a different time now.
I agree. And I looked up the name also. It's not Citizens Possessive Police, it's Citizen Dash Police.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we have some important discussion to have on that item, but I'll just keep us moving for now. Here we are in communication now, and this section. Looks like you have quite a few suggestions here, Elise. Would it be best if I just accept them all and then we read it as is?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of it was just moving stuff around, like that whole green block in the middle. Well, it's green on my screen. Sorry, the purple block for you was just moving. It was in the conclusion, and I moved it up to be part of recommendation R.